Recording in progress.
Yeah. You tell me, I'm gonna go.
My GPS says.
Call to order the regular meeting of the Randall City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Dorns.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Woodall.
Here.
City Manager Knopf.
Here.
Chief of Police Connor.
Yeah.
Finance Director Dillingham.
Here.
Community Development Director Caldwell. Water Superintendent Jensen.
Here.
Wastewater Superintendent Taylor.
Here.
Management Analyst Sanborn.
Here.
City Attorney Gans.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public presentations. This is the time for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with council or staff is not allowed under the Ralph M. Brown Act. Excuse me. Items requiring council actions not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council directs, unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the council? Are there any hands raised or emails?
No.
And we will close public presentation and move to the consent calendar. Is there anyone, any council member who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar?
One,
Item number 1?
yeah, and it's just, I wasn't here.
Okay. So we'll remove item number 1. Is there anyone in the audience there who would like to remove anything from the consent calendar? Hearing none, then is there a motion to approve the consent calendar items 2 and 3?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Motion carries 5-0. Councilmember Woodall, item 1.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't here.
And is there a motion to approve item 1 of the consent calendar?
So moved.
We have a motion, and is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries 4 with 1 abstention. Councilmember Woodall. Thank you. Now we'll move to report staff and communications. Staff communications, page 13 in our packet.
Thank you, Mayor Dorns, members of the council. Staff has been meeting with Caltrans representatives for the Clean California grant programs and discussions with the city engineer moving forward with a botany study for the Eel River area as part of the required environmental work. They're very hot to trot to get the project moving forward, which is great news. And we anticipate being potentially doing a kickoff press event with Caltrans in the next week or 2 at their request. We're also meeting with our pavement contractor who'll be doing our annual pavement work on Riverside, Cherry, and Orchard Streets for this summer. Unfortunately, obviously, it started raining, so there's a little bit of a delay associated with that, but we anticipate the contractor will be yeah, there is somebody on the line who needs to mute on their end. Staff put together a newsletter that should be out to the public here in the next day or two. And we are also wanting to remind folks of the annual cleanup day on Saturday, May 7th, day before Mother's Day. That's the annual cleanup where folks can take excess refuse and materials down to the school parking lot to deposit that material free of charge as part of our annual cleanup program. I also want to specifically have Jeff speak on an event that occurred today that I think is newsworthy and that the council and the public should be aware of. So Jeff, if you're on the line, can you give the council an update?
Mayor Garnes, members of the council. This morning I was in court. Demetrius Coleman, if you may remember, was convicted of murder in Rio Dell. He murdered Johnny Renfro over on Monument. After 2 years in jail, he had a hearing today requesting a new trial for a multitude of reasons. Judge Kelly Neal denied his motion for a new trial, and he was sentenced this morning to life in prison without the possibility of parole with a concurrent 25 to life sentence. Mr. Coleman was not repentant. He was actually quite angry, and the mother of his child was asked to leave the courtroom when she would not stop talking. It was kind of an interesting show. So that brings to a conclusion the homicide case from 2019. If anybody has any questions, be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Chief Connor. Thank you for that update and for all the work that you did to bring this to a close. It was very much appreciated. I know you went to a lot of extensive work to do it, so we appreciate that. And is there Mayor Pro Tem?
I'd just like to echo what Mayor Garnes said. Chief, you were instrumental in getting the verdict, and thank you and your staff for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Carter.
Just thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson.
Same.
Councilmember Woodall.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there, okay, so are there anyone in the public who wishes to ask a question of the chief or the staff regarding anything on the highlights? Hearing none, any hand raised, any emails? Okay, then. Are there any other questions for staff? From the council? Then we will close the staff report and move on to presentation by JJA CPA Inc., our fiscal year 2020-2021 audited financial statement, page 19 in our package. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes and members of the council. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Cheryl, who's on the line.
Good evening, Mayor Garnes and members of the council. Tonight, we're presenting the fiscal year 2021 audited financial statements. Overall, the city's financial situation improved, and that is a good thing, but we need to remember that the city has decades of deferred maintenance, such as streets, water distribution systems, and sewer collection systems that those monies are needed for to keep the city moving forward. And I'm proud to say that we didn't have any findings and that there were no material weaknesses found. And with that, we can turn it over to the independent auditors. Brett.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Brett Jones. I was the engagement manager on the audit this year. As Cheryl had mentioned, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion that we can give. You can find our report on the first page of the financial statements. There is one thing I just want to point out. There is an emphasis of a matter paragraph. That's nothing to be concerned about. That's just to notify users that the city implemented a new accounting standard. In addition to our auditor's report, I just want to kind of go through the format of the financials really quickly and then open it up for questions. You can find the management's discussion and analysis following our auditor's report on page 3. This provides a narrative overview and analysis of the financial statements, and this is prepared by management of the city, not the auditors, not us. Following the management's discussion and analysis are the financial statements themselves, starting on page 19 with the statement of net position. These are the government-wide financial statements, so that would include all activities of the city, governmental and business type. And those are prepared on a full accrual basis. The next section would be the fund-based statements, starting on page 24 with the balance sheet. These would represent just the governmental activities of the city, and these are prepared on a modified accrual basis of accounting, more similar to cash with a shorter accrual period. And then there are reconciliations that go between the fund financial statements and the government-wide financial statements that can kind of help you walk you through the financials and the changes from one basis to another. And then following the financial statements themselves are the notes, starting on page 43. This will have the accounting policies for the city and detailed financial information and disclosures about the balances in the financial statements. So in addition to the set of financial statements we issued, we also issued our communications letter to the city council. This is the standard letter we issue at the end of every audit. It used to be called the management letter. Now it's the communications with governance letter. It just kind of explains the audit process in a little more detail. And if we had anything to report, any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, they'd be in this letter. And we are really pleased to report that there's nothing to report. So overall, the audit went very well this year. Cheryl and her staff were able to get us everything we needed to do our job without any issues. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have on the audit.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for doing the audit and for giving us such a grand report. And thank you, Cheryl, for making sure that the city was in the right space and doing things the right way. We appreciate that. I will open it up to the council for questions.
No question.
Okay, Councilmember Woodall?
No, just like to thank Cheryl and her staff for doing such a good job.
Absolutely, and that, thank you for saying, and staff, because I should have added that in too, so, absolutely. Councilmember.
No questions, just lots of thank yous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And is there anyone from the public who would like to ask a question, make a comment on the financial report, the audit? Are there any emails or hand raised?
Yes, Mayor, we did receive one comment. It's from Stephen Sharon Wolf, and it reads as follows. Since we're talking about the city budget, please discuss how the proposed reductions in commercial cannabis taxes that will be discussed at the next city council meeting could impact city finances, including any impact of water, sewer, or street funds. The city received a significant amount of cannabis tax revenue. Is that broken down into cultivation taxes versus sales tax on dispensaries? That would help inform the discussion at the next meeting regarding tax reductions.
Thank you. That kind of almost sounds like a agenda kind of thing, so I have to ask city manager to address that, please.
Thank you, Mayor Garn. So technically, we are not talking about the city budget. We're talking about the city audit for prior fiscal year. However, I will say that the cannabis taxes and water and sewer rates are not related at all. So water and wastewater are enterprise funds, which are required to operate and fund themselves. Cannabis taxes go primarily to the general fund, which primarily supports law enforcement services. So that's an important difference there. And then in terms of, there is a slight impact in the sense that as we expand businesses in the community, whether they're cannabis or non-cannabis businesses in the community, you have a larger and wider customer base for water and sewer rates. And so that helps defray the cost of services the more customers are able to sign onto that system and consume those services. And then in terms of the question about cultivation versus sales taxes for dispensaries, I believe the council's prior discussions were really related to cultivation taxes. And again, I just want to reiterate, any cannabis tax is a tax that no other individual or business in the community pays unless you are involved in the cannabis industry or a consumer of the product. So it's a tax that's levied above and beyond any normal business tax for any other type of business in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And so hearing no other questions or no other emails, we will move, we will close that item because it will be saved in file. And now we will move on to the item, the public hearing and presentation on proposed water and wastewater rate study with proposed rates through fiscal year 2026 through 2027. Pursuant to Proposition 218 with possible continuation of tabulation of the protest ballots to May 3rd, 2022. Page 118 in our packets.
Thank you, Mayor Barnes, members of the council. We do want to advise attendees of the meeting that to submit any remaining protest ballots that have not been turned in the box here prior to the close of the public hearing. So this is kind of the final few minutes to submit any remaining protest ballots. So the council's asked today to open a Proposition 218 public hearing, which has been noticed over 45 days ago. And this is in accordance with state law in order to make adjustments to water and wastewater rates. So what the city has been focusing on over the past few years is trying to provide information to the public and coming up with a long-term plan in terms of rates. And so we have utilized the firm of Lekowitz and Sang to help us come up with the appropriate rate structure for the needs of the system. So that certain capital projects we have a shot at accomplishing. So the system, both systems today, they have a new well system, a new water plant, relatively new, and a new state-of-the-art wastewater treatment facility here in Rio Dell. So a lot of other communities are just now tackling these problems. And so a lot of these issues have been solved over the past few years. In each case, what the city tries to do is leverage as much grant money as we can to get the state and or federal government to pay for these services. So for example, following the 2014 drought, the city aggressively pursued grant funding for the Metropolitan Wells site to provide a backups of water during drought conditions in the city. We were able to get 95% of that funded through state and federal grants. And that really largely is because of the crisis situation that was, potentially there, having only one single source of water that if it failed would be catastrophic for the community. Typically, grants are anywhere from not funded to 80% funded, somewhere around there. So to do anything better than 80%, pulling down 80% state funding is a pretty big success. And again, with prior water improvements and the construction of the wastewater treatment facility, two facilities also received pretty significant grant funding. However, there are payments that we do have to make to the state of California for the indebtedness, and we are paying 0% interest on those debts. What remains is two main critical issues for the city, which is for the water and wastewater system, which is distribution of pushing water out to communities' homes. We have a lot of aged, failing piping systems, and then similarly with the collection system on the sewer side. There are significant issues there that are potentially regulatory in nature that if they are not corrected and fixed, means that the city can get fined by the state of California for non-environmental compliance. So these are kind of two of the main issues that the city will be tackling, not just in the next couple of years, but really over the next 10 or 20 years. And they're pretty significant issues, but they are solvable, particularly if the city gets grant funding. Right now, we have an application out with the State Water Resources Control Board for $9 million of improvements on the water distribution system. And we've been spending better part of the last 6 years trying to put this grant application together to make it competitive. Even that $9 million, that's we're really going to need the state to match probably 80 or 90% of that in order to pay for that project to occur. Otherwise, the cost of those improvements all falls directly on the ratepayers. So just a little bit of an overview of background of the situation. But tonight is about the 218 hearing. The public has an absolute right to submit protest ballots for these proposed rates. And the vote goes according to one parcel, one vote. So you can have multiple people on a single property who vote in protest of the proposed rates, but there's only one vote per parcel. So that's kind of one of the unique features of the state law in Proposition 218. So tonight, what we're going to be going through is to hear public testimony. We certainly, I think everybody understands the difficulty with the bills, the difficulty with inflation going on right now, and a lot of other problems. So we're here to hear you, for you to encourage you to submit your protest ballot. And then at the close of the public hearing, it is recommended that we begin protest tabulation and do it for a period of about 30 minutes, see if we can get through the protest tabulation. If not, staff's recommendation would be to continue the meeting itself to May 3rd, and then to schedule an open vote count here at City Hall between the hours of 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. on Thursday, and if needed, 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. on Friday. So this Thursday and this Friday, in order to accurately count the protest ballots. So with that, we do have Catherine Sang on the line, who will give the overview presentation for the water and wastewater rate study, and will be available to answer any questions that the public has. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to Catherine. Thank you for being on the line.
Okay. And I will
And we will have, Catherine, do you have a copy of the PowerPoint, or do you need Grace to?
I have one, but it says that I need to be given permission to share my screen.
If there's a way to do that.
Thank you for being here tonight. Welcome. We
Thank you.
appreciate you coming out. Yeah.
I would make her co-host.
Okay. Okay. Hi, good evening, Mayor, City Council, and the public. My name is Catherine Sang. I'm a principal with Lahovich and Sang Municipal Consultants, and we've been working with the city since last year on this water and sewer rate study. The presentation I'm showing tonight is an overview of why these water and sewer rates are needed. And I will be available to answer questions after I'm done. Okay, let me just give you a background. The water rates, for water rates, they've increased each year since 2015. I'll show you the history of the water rates. They've increased about 2% each year. The rate structure, where the actual structure of the rates was last updated also in 2015. For wastewater rates, they have increased annually by the change in the CPI since 2013. And the rate structure was last updated in 2014. And as Kyle mentioned, the water and sewer funds, they're enterprise funds, which means that they're self-supported from rates and charges. They're completely separate from the general fund, and they do not receive any tax revenue. So all expenses, capital, operating, debt service needs to be paid from these water and sewer rates. Our rate study covers a 5-year period beginning fiscal year 2023 through fiscal year 2026-27. So we're proposing that if the rates are adopted, the new rates will go into effect beginning July 1st of 2022 of this year, and future rate increases will also go into effect July 1st of each year to match the fiscal year. We presented these rate options at the January 4th and February 15th City Council meetings. And tonight is just an overview explaining why we are recommending what we're recommending. Prop 218 is the part of the California Constitution. This governs how water and sewer rates are adopted. It was implemented by California voters in 1996, and it was added to the California Constitution. It says that rates, so water and sewer rates, must be based on the reasonable cost of service. These rates also must be proportionally recover costs based on how customers take that service, meaning that commercial and residential customers, different customer classes can be charged different rates, but we need to show why they are charged these different rates. Also, the revenues from rates can only be used for the intended purpose, meaning that water and sewer rate revenue can only be used for water and sewer expenses. They cannot be taken by the general fund or any other enterprise fund. Also, Prop 218 will only allow a rate study to cover a maximum of 5 years. So after 5 years, an agency or city must do another rate study in order to increase rates. There are also several procedural requirements that Prop 218 requires. The first is to conduct a rate study. The second is, once that rate study is completed, we must mail a notice to property owners explaining that we are increasing rates and explaining that we will be holding a public hearing. And that public hearing must be held at least a minimum of 45 days after that notice is mailed. And ultimately, rates cannot be adopted if more than 50% of the ratepayers or property owners submit written protests. And as Kyle mentioned, it's 1 vote per parcel. So why are these rate increases needed? Well, they're needed to fund cost of providing water and sewer service. That cost of providing service includes operating and maintenance costs, debt service obligations or debt service payments, as well as debt service coverage covenants. And I'll explain that in the next slide. This is actually a legally binding agreement that the city agreed to when they agreed to borrow money from the state or from any bondholders. So it basically means that gross revenues need to be 1.2 times annual debt service payments. Cost of service also includes capital projects and also maintaining reserves for emergencies. We also need to raise rates to eliminate the sewer operating deficit. And we also want to retain a positive credit rating to obtain these grants and loans and other debt financing to pay for these needed capital projects. When we looked at different rate scenarios, there was 3 main fund objectives that we identified to determine what was the most appropriate rate increases. The first was to meet that debt service coverage, which is a financial measure of an agency's or a city's ability to repay outstanding debt. And for the city, well, for the water and sewer fund, that ratio is 1.2. So again, net operating revenues over total annual debt service has to be at least 1.2 in order to be in compliance with your debt obligations. The second objective is to meet fund reserve targets. There are 3 reserves for each the water and sewer fund. The first is an operating reserve operating reserve. That target is 30% of annual O&M costs. There's also a capital reserve target that we're proposing, and that's $1 million. And a debt service reserve target, which is equivalent to 1 year's total debt service. And that's part of your debt. That's another debt coverage or debt covenant that the city agreed to when it borrowed the state revolving fund and other loan agreements. So that debt service reserve is basically a requirement. The third objective is to maintain positive net revenues. This ensures that each utility is covering its cost of service, and this helps each fund to avoid an operating deficit and avoid having to dip into reserves to pay for annual operating costs. So I'll go through the water rates first, and then I'll do sewer following this. Okay, so the water system overview. Raw water is pumped from infiltration galleries under the Eel River to the treatment plant. The city completed about an $8.5 million project to establish that new raw water intake, which lifted a water emergency declaration that had been in place for over 5 years. This project also dramatically improved the quality of water for the city. In 2014, the city began the Metropolitan Wells Project that provided a state-of-the-art filtration system on the city's old well site, which also provided an additional layer of water security for the city. So the city has been completing these capital projects for many years. There's more projects to come, but the city is being proactive and providing additional sources of water and making sure that the quality of water is being improved and also complying with all the state regulations. The city has about 1,500 total water customer accounts, and total consumption is about 100,000 cubic feet per year. And that's remained pretty steady over the past 3 or 4 years. So here are the historic and current monthly water rates. So in 2017, there was a big jump in the water rates, but since then, water rates have increased about 2% each year. And there's there's 2 components of your water rates. There's this fixed charge, which means that all customers are charged this fixed charge, regardless of any water consumption. This recognizes that even when a customer doesn't use any water, that there's costs that the city incurs just to maintain that ability or readiness to serve for each connection. So that is your base charge. The fixed charge currently generates about 74% of total water sales revenue. The second component of your water rates is that consumption rate, which is per 100 cubic feet. And 100 cubic feet or 1 CCF is equal to 748 gallons. So this charge is based on your actual usage, and all customers are billed at the same charge, and there's only a single tier. This portion of the rate is intended to recover costs that vary based on the amount of water used, such as utilities and chemicals. And currently, the consumption rate generates about 26% of total water sales revenue. There's also a third charge, and this is only levied for about 27 customers in the Dinsmore zone. This is an additional flat charge to pay for additional operating capital costs that the city incurs to provide water service to the area, since they are outside of the city limits. So here is a historical summary of the water fund, of the revenues and expenses. And you'll see that the water fund has been doing pretty well since 2018-19. They've been in the black. Based on this year's budget, there should be about net revenues about 72,000. So the city has done a good job of controlling costs, and the water rate increases have allowed the city to pay for its cost of providing service. So going forward, we're projecting what the operating costs are for the water fund. So on average, we're projecting about a 3 to 5% increase for most of these expenses, although there is, for this year or for next year, there is a bump. I know the 6 large is 300% for chemicals, but in actuality, it's probably about a $50,000 increase in chemicals, and staff has been in touch with their suppliers, and that's just the cost for chemicals are just increasing. So there is a big bump for chemicals for next year, but overall, water expenses are expected to increase about 11% in 2022-23. But for the future, we're projecting about a 4% increase through the rate study period. So the big driver of the water rate increases are the capital projects that Kyle had mentioned. Over the next 5 years, the water fund needs about $15 million in capital projects. So this red box, these are the big projects, and these are the projects that we are, that the city has applied for grants for. So that includes that distribution system upgrade project for about $9.5 million. And that's, the city has applied for a grant through the State Water Resources Control Board. The other big projects are the Eel River Crossing Pipeline retrofit, and that total cost is estimated at $3.5 million. The other project is the Douglas Tank Seismic Retrofit project. And that's estimated at $1.9 million. For the Eel River and the Douglas Tank Seismic Retrofit project, the city is applying for a hazard mitigation grant through the FEMA program. And these are our assumptions for those two projects. Through that program, the grant funding is about 75%. So the city would need to get a loan for about 25% for each of those projects. So in total, we're projecting about probably 1.3 million that the city will have to borrow. The loan terms are 30-year payback terms. The interest rate, we're estimating this may be a little conservative, it's 3%. So we're estimating debt service for the Eel River Crossing Pipeline retrofit project to be about $45,000 each year, and for the Douglas Tank Seismic retrofit project to be about $24,000 each year. Now for the big project, the distribution system project, the State Water Resources Control Board asked us to look at 3 different funding scenarios. The first scenario is scenario 1, which would be 100% loan, meaning that the city would have to borrow the total $9.5 million project costs. The second scenario would be a 90% grant and a 10% loan option. So the city would have to pay back $950,000. And scenario 3 would be the 100% grant scenario, in which the city wouldn't have to pay back any of the loan amount. After discussion with staff and city council, we decided to proceed with scenario 2, the 90% grant and 10% loan option. We do think that the city has a good chance of receiving a large grant portion. So we are recommending this scenario 2 with the loan terms of about 20-year payback terms and 0% interest. So total debt service is estimated about $48,000 a year. So I know there's a lot of numbers on here, but I just wanted to show how we determined that scenario 2 was the best option for the city. As you'll see, this top box shows what the proposed rate increases would be. I included a no rate increase option to show what would happen if we didn't increase rates. With the 100% loan, we would need 12% increases followed by 4%. With the 90% grant, 10% loan option, we were recommending 3% annual rate increases. And for scenario 3, it would be the 100% grant option, and that would be 2% rate options. So with our recommended scenario 2, we'll be meeting debt service coverage. You'll see that if we didn't increase rates, debt service coverage would fall below that 1.2 ratio in 2026-27. That was our objective 1. Our goal number 2 is to meet reserve fund targets. We meet it every year. And maintaining positive net operating revenues are third objectives. We also meet that with the proposed 3% rate increases. So here's a chart that shows what the projected operating reserve fund balances would be for each of those scenarios. So our scenario 2 is this green. It pretty much stays level. Like, we're making sure that we meet all of our targets for every year. The red line is our operating reserve fund target. So here are our proposed water rates. We're not proposing any changes to the actual rate structure. We did do a new cost allocation, or basically realigning the rates based on your current number of customers and your water use. And if you want more details on that, I can go into more explanation about that. It's also in our report, but we're not changing the rate structure. We're still proposing that base rate. All customers pay that same base rate. That's your minimum charge. And for water use, we're proposing to keep that single tier. All customers pay that the same rate for every drop of water that they use. And also the Dinsmore zone charge. Dinsmore customers will still have to pay the additional fixed charge for the additional cost to serve them. So here are some sample bill impacts. And due to the updated cost of service allocation, the bill impacts for that first year, this 2022-23, will vary based on your actual usage. And I do want to mention that the average use for residential customers is 500 cubic feet per month, but that does change. Your usage does change each month, depending on weather and such. So for the average customer using 500 cubic feet a month, your bill will actually decrease for the first 3 years. Currently, your monthly bill is $65.63. And based on the rates proposed for July 1st, 2022, your bill will actually go down about $3.51 and then eventually increase 2% going forward. And here's a chart that graphically shows what the average bill would be for the next 5 years. So we're proposing at the end of the 5th year that the bill would increase to about $67 or $68. Okay. And here is a survey showing, excuse me, the city's current rates with some neighboring agencies. And I do want to mention that many of these agencies will also be increasing their rates. But currently, here's Rio Del, and this is based on that average use of 500 cubic feet a month, based on our July 1st, 2022 rates. He'll be in the middle here, $62.12. So we understand that rate increases are not popular, and we do want to provide some assistance to those who need help paying their bills. So to comply with Prop 218, water rate revenues for one group of customers cannot be used to subsidize the rates of another group. So we're proposing to use non-rate revenues to fund a low-income discount program. We're going to use late fee revenues, which is estimated at about $25,000. And to develop a low-income discount, we are using the PG&E's CARE program requirements. And based on the PG&E CARE program, there's about 700 customers in the city that would be eligible. And so that would equate to about a monthly discount of $3 off your water bill. And that's about based on our average water bill of $62.12, that's about a $5 discount. So the city will review the program annually to determine whether the city has enough late fee revenue to fund this program, but the city does want to offer a water low income discount for those customers that are eligible for the PG&E Care program. And that concludes my water presentation. If there's questions about water, I could take those now, or I could wait till I'm done with the sewer portion.
I mean, just
We want to continue because then we open the public hearing.
Okay. So I'll go to sewer. We're going to do the same thing. Okay, so the sewer system includes a vast network of collection pipes, manholes, cleanouts, and pumps that convey the sewage or the wastewater to the treatment plant. The city uses an aerated activated sludge process, which is secondary treatment. And in 2013, the city completed a major plant upgrade, which replaced the old treatment plant with that new activated sludge process to add nutrient removal. And this project also included construction of the flood irrigation field located in the metropolitan. So the total number of sewer accounts is about 1,470, and total sewer flow is about 79,100 cubic feet each year. And here are the summary of the historic and current sewer rates since 2013. And these rates have increased by the CPI, by the change in the CPI. So it's about 1 to about 2% since 2013. So for sewer customers, there's this fixed charge, which all customers are charged based on per EDU. An EDU is an equivalent dwelling unit, which is basically one single family home. And in addition to this fixed charge, there's a volume rate based on your customer class. There's 4 customer classes. There's low, domestic, medium, and high. Residential customers are in this domestic strength. The low strength customers include like car washes, offices, retail stores, schools without cafeterias. And this medium category includes like beauty shops, medical offices, dental offices, and the high strengths include restaurants, markets with food prep and bakeries. So your volume rate, this portion is based on your water use. It's based on the 3-month average winter water use from December, January, and February. So it's not based on total water use, it's your 3-month average. Because it recognizes that sewer, that the majority, well, not the majority, but that not all water used goes to the treatment plant. So the city has also capped consumption for single family and multifamily residential use at 1,500 cubic feet per month. Again, the fixed charge, the sewer rate, there's 2 components, that fixed charge. All customers are charged that same fixed charge per EDU, and this is the minimum charge for all customers. So if you don't put anything down the sewer, you're still going to be charged that fixed charge. And this currently generates about 71% of total sewer service revenues. Now, that second component is that volume rate per 100 cubic feet, and that rate varies based on those 4 customer strengths. It's based on your average winter water use consumption. And this currently generates about 30% of total sewer service revenues. So here is a historic summary of the sewer fund. As you see down here in the red, the sewer fund has been in the negative for about 3 out of the 4 past years. Without rate increases, the sewer utility will continue to miss debt service coverage and will not meet its operating fund reserve targets beginning in 2023-24. So here is a projection of future sewer operating expenses. Again, we use the same cost escalators as water. Salaries and benefits are escalated about 5%. Everything else is about 3%, except for chemicals for next year, which is projected to increase about 300% or $75,000. So overall, operating costs for 2022-23 are projected to increase about 11%. And for the future years, total cost escalation is about 4%. In terms of capital projects, that'll be funded from rates. There's about $525,000 in planned capital projects. That includes SCADA upgrades, ANI reduction, and UV disinfection. We also we looked at different scenarios for sewer, but we only looked at 2 scenarios. We looked at scenario 1, which would be 4% inflationary rate increases, basically to cover operating costs. And we also looked at 8% increases, because those 4% increases actually were not meeting those 3 objectives. As you'll see under here, goal 1, to meet debt service coverage, we're missing debt service coverage. We currently are missing debt service coverage. And with the 8% projected rate increases, we'll meet coverage in that 3rd year in 2024-25. The second goal, to meet sewer fund reserve targets, we currently are meeting them, but if we don't do any rate increases, we're going to miss those reserve targets beginning in 2023-24. And to maintain positive net revenues, again, we're in the red, but with the projected 8% rate increases, we're projected to be in black in that 4th year in 2025-26. And here's a graph that shows what the projected fund balances would be for each of those scenarios. So that red dotted line is the reserve fund target. The gray line is if there were no rate increases. You'll see that the reserve fund target, you'll see that the reserves will dip below the target. Same with scenario 1, those 4% inflationary rate increases. With the 8% rate increases, we'll be meeting our operating fund targets each year. And here are our proposed sewer rates. We're not proposing any changes to the rate structure. We're keeping that same fixed monthly charge per EDU. Also that volume rate per 100 cubic feet that varies by your customer strength. We're still keeping that volume rate based on that 3-month average of winter water use. And single family and multifamily residential consumption will still be capped at that 1,500 cubic feet per month. And here are some sample sewer bill impacts. And just as with water, that first year, the impacts vary. Well, it'll vary based on your winter water use and customer strength class. So we did an updated cost of service allocation based on updated number of customers and sewer flow. So let's say for the average user with that 500 cubic feet per month, you'll see about a $4.50 increase for 2022-23. That's about a 6% increase on your bill. And going forward, we're projecting about a 7 to 8% increase, or about $6 to $7 increase per month over the next 4 years or 5 years. And here's a graph showing that a typical residential customer sewer bill using that 500 cubic feet a month. So current bill is about $75.68. So in 26-27, that bill will increase to about $107.60. And here is the regional bill survey. As you see, Rio Del is on the higher side currently. At $75.68, and our proposed rate will also still be in the higher side. But all these other agencies will likely also be increasing rates, if not this year, in future years also, because they're also facing the same capital needs and operating costs as the city is. And as with water, we are proposing that sewer low-income discount. Using the same methodology, we'll be using the sewer late fee revenue, was projected at about at $25,000 total for the year. So based on the 700 customers that are eligible for PG&E, that's about a $3 monthly discount. And off of that average sewer bill, that equates to about a 4% discount off the total sewer bill. And again, this program will be reviewed each year by the city to make sure that there is sufficient funding to pay for these the low income discount. So here's a chart showing the proposed combined monthly bill. The blue portion is the water, the green is the sewer. So currently the total combined bill is about $141.31, and that's for this typical single family residential customer that uses 500 cubic feet a month. For next year, the bill will go increase about $1 to $142.29. And then by the end of 2026-27, that bill will increase to $175.29. So for the Prop 218 protest, the city mailed out 1,304 notices to property owners and customers on March 1st. As of the beginning of today, April 19th, the city had received 4 protests in the mail. Per Prop 218, only 1 vote per parcel will be counted, and the city cannot revise rates if the city receives protests from more than 50% of affected parcels. So there needs to be a total of 653 protests. That's 50% plus 1 protest in order for the city to not be able to adopt rates. So the city council still needs to vote to approve the rates, but if there were enough protests, then they wouldn't proceed with the vote. So if the rates are approved, rates will be increased on July 1st of each year, beginning July 1st, 2022 through 2026. And the city will review each utility's financial standing each year prior to implementing any rate increases. So basically the city will review the water and sewer funds before determining if they actually need to raise rates each year. And that is the end of my presentation. I could take questions, or I guess, Kyle, how we proceed with the hearing?
Thank you. So what we would do now at the close of the presentation is open the public hearing and allow the public to provide testimony on the proposed rate adjustments. I would remind those attending, again, at the close, we need to receive any remaining protest ballots before the close of the public hearing in this box up here by the microphone. But we're ready to open the public hearing and receive public comment.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing. Anyone's welcome to come up to the podium to speak. It's not meant for a dialogue, but just to so that we can hear your opinions. And they're limited to 3 minutes per person. And I think that's.
Yeah, Karen has the timer, so.
Yeah, we have a 3-minute timer, and also there's a sign-in sheet if people would just put their name down on the paper in case we don't, just for the record. You said that way.
And after we have the public here, we will open also for any emails or any hand raised on Zoom. So anyone who would like to speak, please come up and speak. We'd appreciate it.
Matt, do anything with this thing or no?
No, that's totally good. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Bridget Vale. I'm a citizen here in Randall. And I put together a proposition to hopefully get enough signatures to not have this increase go through. And after listening to what she had said, it's even more concerning because you guys are saying that there's 700 people in Rio Dell that's eligible for the PG&E Care program. And you guys are only going to offer maybe a $3 discount. That's kind of concerning because if there's 700 people in Rio Dell that already qualifies for the care program through PG&E, I don't know how they're going to be able to pay for this increase. To me, it's absurd. I know that my husband did come up today and he turned in a binder with over 300 petitions in it. So I'm assuming that you guys haven't counted that yet?
No.
Okay. So to me, it's just really, really concerning when you do have a large number of low-income families in this town. You have single parents, you have people who are on a fixed income already for disability, Social Security, And when you guys are going to propose to increase this that much, it's gonna come down to like the elderly either getting gas in their car or paying for their prescriptions or having to pay their water bill. And she said how much there was for late fees already for water bills. Can you imagine what it's going to be like when the rate increases? If people can't afford to pay their bill right now and they're already late trying to pay for it, I don't know how they're going to be able to afford that. And the other thing that was concerning to me is in this letter, it said that there's approximately 1,400 customers, but then she had said there's 1,500 for water, sewer, and like 1,470 for the other one. So when I came up to City Hall to ask, this is approximately 1,400. So if we had to get half plus one, no one could tell me the exact number of people that we would have to get signed petitions for. So I don't know how there can be more water customers than sewer customers. To me, that's concerning also. And another question I had was when I did come up to City Hall and ask, the lady that I spoke to at the counter said that every parcel was supposed to get mailed a letter, one of these. I have 2 parcels, I received 1. I didn't receive one for my other one. She looked it up in the computer, it took her quite a while to find it. She said it was mailed, the post office must have lost it. My cousin also owns 2 parcels here in town. She received 1, not 2 of these. So if every property owner is supposed to receive 1 of these per parcel, I did not get 2. So I really think you guys should take it into consideration on this rate increase, because like I said, we have a lot of low-income families in this town, and they're not gonna be able to afford this. And there's a lot of senior citizens that can't afford their bills already. So if you get to take it into consideration, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else? And would you please, when you say your name, I think they need to tell you their address or just the name is sufficient. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Angelina. I'm at 223 Bellevue. I'm a new resident here in Rio Dell. And I just want to say that the first red flag that I saw was, at first she said that it was going to go down and then back up the rates. And then I saw it just going up. But to have your bill be over almost $200 a month, when Rio Dell really doesn't provide any jobs for their residents. So how can you propose such an increase when everybody already has to commute so much, even to go to school, high school, anything, you have to commute. So these families are commuting 2 to 3 times a day, so I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Also there was talk about creating more customer base. Well, we just had to shut down our business here in Rio Dell because we found out you guys don't allow vacation rentals in town center. So, well, there goes one business. And to make it what the parameters that the city wants us to make it in is almost impossible. With the conditions that these buildings are in, it's going to take numerous amounts of grants just for the people to do that to their own properties. So, thinking about the overall, everything that's going on coming out of COVID, I know there was an article recently about the customers having to get shut-offs in Rio Dell because they couldn't pay their bills. It's already brought up again, how are they going to do it again? But, maybe giving more time since COVID, we're all just coming out to propose this increase. So it's not such a shocker to people. I think something that you guys should also consider. I had some other things in my head. Yeah, I think, there's the other thing was I see a lot of Rio Dell in the newspaper. You guys are getting grants, you're doing a lot of great things, but now it's time for you guys to do something for the people and residents that live here. It's not just about making headlines in the newspaper and being a city that people want to move to. I just bought a house here that you lost about 5 to 6 residents that moved out of state because they know that this increase was happening and they live on Social Security and their family can no longer live here anymore. I'm happy to be here, but knowing in the hoops that I had to go through, I'm going to be struggling and have to maybe pick up a second job and have to commute as well. just to be able to keep my home. So, really take that into consideration, the demographics that you guys are talking about. And if you do want to get more customer base, think about more incentives to have businesses here and to create more jobs here for the residents that live here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Oates. I own 2 houses here in Riodale, one on Main Street. It was a vacation rental, but I have to close it down since they're not allowed in town center for whatever reason. And I own a house up on Pacific. And the rate increase, I mean, I'll pay it, it'll happen. But I just feel for like low income people, they're probably gonna have a really hard time with it. And since all these projects seem to be like subsidized by the state anyways, and it's not, I know it's not free money, but maybe you guys should just take the credit hit and not, just let the people have lower bills, but take your credit hit. It's kind of like something you do in hard times, I guess. Otherwise, I just feel like in 4 years, when the water bill is almost $200, it's going to be kind of unaffordable for people to just like afford their mortgages and everything else. Yeah, so just something to think about.
Thank you.
Since, all the funding is like free or whatever from the state, so it's not free for the people per se. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak up? Seeing none, are there any emails?
We did receive one. And it's also from Stephen Sharon Wolf, and they want to know is the 5% annual increase in salaries and benefits cited in the water rate study above and beyond the 10% across the board salary increases approved in January?
I don't know if there are any other Zoom comments.
So that will close the public hearing because there's no one else. Oh,
Was that question going to be answered about your?
well, that was what I said at the beginning, is that it's not meant to be a dialogue back and forth. It's to hear the public's comments. So I'm not.
Well, I can try to
address
answer.
that.
I can
City
try to,
manager?
yeah, I can try to answer some of the questions.
Thank you.
So the 10% increase for compensation that occurred in January was not part of the annual budget process for the current year. It was also not incorporated in the current rate study. So the 5% that increase would be covered over 2 years of adjustments to the rate. So 5% gets to 10%. So it's an average estimate for the cost increases related to labor. That also includes certain benefits that the council has limited control over, some of the costs of certain services, insurance and whatnot. With the why is there a discrepancy between water and sewer accounts? An example would be the Dinsmore Plateau, where there are water accounts holders up there, but 0 sewer accounts. So some folks are on septic systems, and conversely, some people are on well systems to generate water, but they do participate in wastewater. So they are two separate funds.
Do you have any other question that city manager can answer for you?
I have lots of questions, but like you said, this wasn't really a dialogue, so I guess I could just email them in to you guys.
I just have one clarification question. Does our public comment count as us turning in a ballot?
No, you would just want the ballots up there that you just need to fill out and put in before the.
Before one clarification.
Okay, that's good.
Is it this packet?
No, city manager, where are the ballots?
We do not have any ballots. So you can write it on a piece of paper, and what you would want to do is in the 218 requirements.
I'm gonna have some of the bar to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Were you guys supposed to apply those or no? Okay.
They were
Well, can you
mailed
ask
out,
where they
yeah.
were, so I was just curious.
Okay.
I guess I want to clarify too, can I clarify something real quick? So for people who are renting, do they get to vote in protest of this, or is it only homeowners?
No. One per parcel, so if the homeowner protests, then for that parcel, then that's a protest, but if the homeowner doesn't, if the renter protests, then that counts for that parcel.
People who are living in mobile homes, does each vote count, or is it just the property owner?
That's where there was confusion.
Yeah, so if a, for example, an apartment complex or a mobile home park is on one parcel. So if multiple people sign the petition or the ballot, the veto ballot, it only counts one vote per parcel. So for example, an apartment complex, only one customer would have to protest in order for the entire parcel to be, yeah.
And that is a state law, that is not Rio Dell's law, that is the state. So everyone is aware of that. So I was, I'm sorry.
So Jackie Wilson, 133 Second Avenue. I want to say that we've had like chemists come to the city council before in previous years and talk about the importance of water and how it could like unincorporate the city. So it is a vital concern. It's not just raising the water for no reason. It's important to have good quality water. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm not closing the hearing yet because I thought someone was filling out paperwork. And once I close it, that can't be, so I was just waiting.
I should close the hearing.
Thank you, Peter. And
Well, let's do, let's do one final call for the protest ballots before we close the meeting. So I don't know if somebody was out.
I know, I thought someone went out.
He went out and grabbed some for he's back.
Oh,
Thank you.
Then I will close the public hearing and we will recess for 30 minutes to start the tabulation. If the tabulation is finished, we will then continue to vote till May 3rd, but if it isn't, we will have a public counting, so the public can be here, is what I'm trying to say, during the time that the protest votes are being counted. Thursday between.
so it'll be Thursday between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. And if necessary, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Friday.
April 27th.
Correct. But yeah, and we are reconvening. This is just a recess so that we can begin the tabulation. And then we will reconvene at 8:15 to report whether the tabulation is complete or needs to be. report on the tabulation.
Complete or needs to be complete?
If we can't make it back at 8:15, how would we find out what the total tabulation was? Can we like call City Hall tomorrow and ask them?
It'll be announcements.
Yeah, it would be.
And if, like, if you are back and you just want to like tune in on Zoom or something, or like you said, just call in the morning.
Perfect.
One on YouTube too.
Or you can stay and watch if you'd like.
Right.
Yeah, you can stay and watch.
Yeah, we're just gonna take a half an hour for them to start.
Yeah, the room is not being closed.
Yeah, so we will adjourn for 30 minutes, reconvene at 8:15.
Thank you.
turn over the floor to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. So staff was able to tabulate the total number of submitted ballots to the group in the last 30 minutes to the city council. And right now the number from that tally is 306. And so the threshold to meet the Proposition 218 state law is 653 protests that are submitted and valid. So based on that, assuming that all are valid, it would not meet the Proposition 218 state requirement for a protest ballot to stop a rate adjustment from proceeding. So the council has a couple of different options. One is the council can direct staff to continue the verification and count of the protest ballots, at which point we would recommend continuing the meeting to May 3rd, and then also scheduling those open door hours for the vote count to proceed. Or and for the purposes of expediency, the council can direct that all protest ballots submitted be considered valid. And then therefore the final vote count would be 306 to the 653 threshold, meaning that the protest is not sustained for stopping the rate adjustment. Hearing and the rate study for May 3rd. And those rates would become effective on July 1st of this year. So hopefully that made sense. There's two fundamental questions. Do you want staff to continue the vote verification, or because the protest cannot be sustained at 306 ballots submitted, that they all be declared valid and thus still not meeting the required tabulation.
Thank you, city manager. So is there a motion to accept the protests, all protests, 306, correct? Yes. 306 protest ballots as valid. Is there a motion to accept that motion? We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So I'll vote. Motion carries 5-0. And now is there a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution to adopt the water sewer rate adjustment for the May and return it to us on May 3rd, 2022 for adoption?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Motion carries 5-0. That on the 3rd. That, we move to council reports. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. Some months ago, this council authorized the cleaning out of some flagpole holes down on Wildwood Avenue in the older part of the central business district. And that action is going to take place tomorrow morning if there is great weather. And Kim Marks and I, along with some of Water Street Superintendent Jensen's crew, will be doing that work. Thank you, that's all.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for doing that work. Councilmember Wilson.
I think since we Now, I think we had an HWA meeting. And in that, one of the things that was discussed is whether or not they would, HWA facility in Eureka, Hawthorne would go back to CRB collection, whether or not we wanted to do that. That was a consensus of the whatever that is, the JPA, that we not do that, we leave it to the handle people to try to be successful in their CRB. To do the two, plus it would have cost HWA over $1 million to reenact CRB, the equipment, and the sort of people and all this. But they can't do it on that site because eventually they want to use that site for the 1383, which I still think needs to be more discussed. Somehow I don't feel that the community really gets the gravity of 1383, which is an organic waste deal. And it's gonna, in fact, when we go to universal pickup will be a big part of that, but it's still, it's a big deal. It does fall on jurisdictions, i.e. us, to be responsible for it, even though we're working through some kind of deal with HWMA, but it's something that's not gonna go away. It's gonna haunt us through cost and just hassle. But that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodall?
Just one thing, that there's a nuisance abatement committee meeting tomorrow at 3:00 here in the meeting room. Thank you.
And Councilmember Carter?
Nuisance abatement tomorrow. And nothing else except that, Frank, I agree that I think we need to I've seen other cities holding forums and informational, educational sessions on 1383 and stuff like that. So.
All we've ever really seen with 1383 is some botched up video that Recology put out that we couldn't even make sense of because they were but you got to get rid of all this waste in your garbage. Is food that can be compostable and not have it in the landfill. And then when you put that in your garbage can, it can't be contaminated with other junk that people put in their garbage, so they got to keep it separate.
I'm watching other cities on social media put out calls for educational sessions about what's happening to garbage. So that maybe could be something else.
Is that something that council would consent on, that we should have some kind of staff look at some kind of, not a study session, but a study session?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're that far along to figure it out.
Yeah, who can say? But I'm keeping an eye out so when we are. I know what everybody else is doing.
I think you have consensus. Okay, and I have nothing to report. So.
Mayor Garnes, I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Second. We have a second. May 3rd. All right. And thank everyone. Thank you, staff, for all the work you guys have done for the.
We're never gonna get our money back on our deposit bottles or anything, is it?
You can go to Pembroke.
Recording stopped.
It's on South Lee.